In what way? In what way were those few different who in all walks of life did not collaborate and refused to participate in public life, though they could not and did not rise in rebellion? The answer to the first question is relatively simple. The non-participants, called irresponsible by the majority, were the only ones who dared judge by themselves. They asked themselves to what extent they would still be able to live in peace with themselves after having committed certain deeds. They decided that it would be better to do nothing, not because the world would then be changed for the better, but simply because only on this condition, could they go on living with themselves at all. Hence they chose also to die when they were forced to participate. These are words that Hannah Arendt wrote in an essay that was originally broadcast on the BBC called Political Responsibility Under Dictatorship. It is a reflection on what it means not to resist violently, but to simply retreat and, in a sense, do nothing, at least as a basic prerequisite when doing something would mean participating in unjust, immoral, or evil acts. In such a case, doing nothing, refusing to participate, takes an enormous amount of courage, as does rebellion. The courage to be lecture serious and the courage to be coarse and sincere are an attempt to bring this question of moral and political courage to the forefront. As Susan Sontag wrote, at the center of our moral life and our moral imagination are the great models of resistance, the great stories of those who have said no. How do we learn to say no? How do we learn to think for ourselves? How do we learn to resist when it's much easier to go along? These are the essential moral questions, or at least some of them, that all of us in our life are going to have to deal with. Around the world, as we see rising populist movements on the left and the right, we are all going to be forced to ask these questions of ourselves. And there's no way, I don't believe, and I don't think Hannah Arendt believed, to teach people to be courageous, except to have them see other people who are courageous and learn to see them as models to be emulated. And also to think about what it means to be courageous and think about the way in which one can continue to live with oneself. And that's what the Courage to Be program at Bard College is designed to do. It's to bring about 60 of you students together in 4 different classes, all doing different things, studying courage in different ways, but reading a few common texts and hearing lectures from people that were selected by your peers, the Hannah Arendt Student Courage to Be Fellows, who they see as models of courageous, self-directed thoughtfulness in a complicated and difficult world. And I'm thrilled today to have them here to introduce our next speaker, who they helped choose. Before I do so, let me simply say, I'm Roger Berkowitz, and I run the Hannah Arendt Center. I'm very happy to be here. We have a couple of upcoming events I just want you to be aware of. There's a sheet of upcoming events on all of your tables. There's a book release and panel discussion on Hannah Arendt's Denktagebuch, and a new book that came out that I edited with a friend, with Ian Story, who some of you may have studied with here, Artifacts of Thinking, and that's on Friday, March 31st at 4:15 p.m. in There's a talk next Thursday on Europe and a bad constitution about the problems in Europe, populist problems in Europe. And then final Courage to Be talk of the semester with Mariam Kaba on Tuesday, April 11th in the faculty dining room. I also just want to point out that there's a conference going to be happening at Bard in April, April 12th to 14th, run by a collaboration with West Point called Equality, More or Less. There's going to be some fantastic speakers there, and I very much hope you'll all be able to attend. If you'd like more information, please talk to Bruce Chilton, who's one of the professors teaching Courage this semester. So without further ado, I'm going to simply introduce the Hannah Arendt Fellows who helped choose tonight's speaker, who will now introduce her. So please welcome Gemma Godfrey, Anna Bauer, and Borelli Michigan. Borelli Michigan, thank you very much.
Hi, thank you all for being here. We're so excited to introduce Tania Bruguera tonight. Between December 2014 and January 2015, Tania Bruguera, a Cuban performance and installation artist, along with several other Cuban artists and bloggers, was arrested and detained 3 separate times after she planned to perform in La Havana's Plaza de la Revolucion. The event, which the Cuban government described as anti-cultural and anti-state, was to be a community-based performance art, in which audience members were given 1 minute to speak freely into a microphone. The performance was never realized as Bruguera was detained upon leaving her house. Upon her release, she was put under house arrest for almost a year and her passport was revoked. During this time, a public letter was crafted and signed by many artists asking for her freedom. We firmly believe her detention and the withdrawal of her Cuban passport are inappropriate responses to a work of art that simply sought to open space for public discussion, was a quote included in their letter. Eventually, she was released and the Cuban government returned her passport in January 2016, 6 months after confiscating it. Bruguera's work centers itself around ideas of power and control, and several pieces investigating and representational of events in Cuban history. Her work is political and philosophical and speaks to, reflects, and takes direction from the teachings of Hannah Arendt.
In 1998, she recontextualized a Cuban folktale about the indigenous people in Cuba who vowed to eat dirt and nothing else rather than submit to being captives of the Spanish conquistadors. In the performance, Bruguera ate dirt to represent a weapon of resistance, standing naked with a lamb carcass around her neck to symbolize both physical and symbolic burden. More recently, in March 2016, she launched a Kickstarter to raise funds for her foundation, InStar, the Institute of Activism Hannah Arendt, which seeks to create bridges of trust where there is no fear of each other, to create a peaceful and responsible response where there is violence, to create a place where people from different political views can come together to build a better country. The Institute engages with Cubans from all parts of society in workshops and opens a space for dialogue and thought in Havana. The Institute's opening ceremony was celebrated with a 100-hour reading and discussion of Arendt's The Origins of Totalitarianism by over 50 participants.
Tania's work takes fearful moments in history, both past and present, and transforms that fear into a space for courage to discuss and form ideas for political revolution. In creating art, reshapes the chaotic view of a new encounter with an unexpected order, or new order to articulate a new future, and mobilizes ideas and radical thought in communities. Bruguera demonstrates a courage that stands up loudly at times when silence is deadly. Right now, she lives in New York City and is unsure if she will ever return to Cuba. Please join us in welcoming artivist, Tania Bruguera.
Well, I'm extremely honored to be here today for two main reasons. First, because the name of this place. I've been for a long, long time a fan of Hannah Arendt. Doesn't mean I understand everything she's saying, but I'm trying very hard to read it and read it and read it. My first encounter with her work was a small book called The Promise of Politics. And when I started reading the first essay, her discussion between, her approach between these two philosophers, Socrates and Plato, and their attitudes towards power, which was really the attitude, it was really kind of questioning what is the role of philosophy in regards to power. And I could change every word philosopher for artist, and I was completely hooked with her from there on. So I'm very honored to be here for that reason, also because I was selected by students. There is nothing better than that because that's the future. So it makes you like talking forward. So hopefully we'll see. I did something today, and thank you, Roger, also, and everybody else. I don't want to talk too much. I just took the questions that were sent to me as a point of conversation, and then I really hope that we have an exchange. I'm better at exchanging than talking on my own. So we'll see. Let me see. Can you see me there? Not very much. Okay. There we go. So. First of all, I want to, before I do the questions, I want to say that I have been, I don't understand what courage is. I have always been confused when people talk about courage. And, but I know how to see it in other people. And I think for me, it's not about courage, but it's about understanding how you feel in front of injustice. And I think being faithful to that, the energy and the way in which you physically react in front of injustice, and understanding that you have a role, that you are there to do something, not just to witness something. So I think as an artist, I've been trying a lot to share this with the audience, which I don't talk about audience anymore, I talk about active citizens. And artist citizen and citizen artist, that's the way in which I talk with the people that participate in my projects. And it's because I think we need, and of course now more than ever, to be active citizens. I'll go back to that. I'm going to start answering the questions. The first question was, has my work always been politically engaged? Well, I think there is a big misunderstanding in the arts, in which we approach art as a play of the mind, a play of the soul, but the soul is political, the mind is political, because it's in a context that is reacting to power and is reacting to power dynamics. So of course, my work was always called politically engaged, not because I wanted, but because I was in Cuba. And I actually did a project, I'm going to give you an example. I did a project that was about a Cuban who left the country, Ana Mendieta was her name. And I was just doing something that was completely emotional, completely personal. I was an 18-year-old student. And then the government decided that I was doing a political gesture, that I was doing a political statement against them. So yes, that was the first time. At 18 years old, I was called politically engaged. And actually, the government, for the first time, was looking to me in a suspicious way. Why is some art political? Well, I think you are political in your art when you are aware of the political timing, specificity of the moment in which you do the work. We talk a lot in art about site specific and about how works with you, collaborate. But I think we need to start thinking about what is the need for art to exist. And this is when you position yourself as a political artist. Why? Because you start looking around and you start understanding that your work responds to something that is specifically happening in that moment. And I also think it's a trick when we approach art for the future or eternity. I don't believe in that. I think the art has to be for today and for now and for us. And this is why my work has been called political, because I do the work for a specific political moment, and I understand how that political moment will give the meaning to my work. So I open the structure of the work in order for it to bring in it the political changes and the political sensibility of the moment. Another thing that changed, and why also I feel that my work is politically engaged, is that I have changed the idea of doing something, doing art that will represent something, for doing an art that will do something. So I think these are changes of attitude towards the practice that I feel have made the work not only seen as political, but acting politically. And I think that's also very important, because in my case, I do think that something is political in terms of art when it has consequences, not only because it has a reference to a political situation, but because it has acted on it. And enact and bring people to react and do something. Another thing that I have done in my work is the idea of working in what I call active hyperrealism. What do I mean by that? I mean that I want the art that I do to be as real as possible. And when I say as real as possible is to operate in reality, in the real. Not to be only isolated from reality and bring to a safe place in which people can experiment and play and nothing is at stake. But what I want is to actually bring all the tools of art into reality and take away the framing of protection, while at the same time we use art to protect our freedom and our right to be citizens, complete citizens. So this is something that I do also. These are quick things just for you to have interaction later. Another question that I had is like, have you ever resisted being labeled a political artist? I actually label myself a political artist. And it has a big battle. I feel, finally I feel like I'm retired because I've been like 20 years fighting for political art in places where, like the United States or Europe, where that was not the thing to do. That was actually a bad word to say you're a political artist. And I actually, in purpose, bring this idea every time that I was invited, every time they put my CV or bio say, Tania is a political artist. It has created a lot of friction at that time because there is always this, I think, mistake, that's my personal opinion, in which we think that if art is dealing with politics is contaminated and is toxic. And I think it's the opposite. I feel that there is a strategy for the people who don't want art to be used at the full capacity to say that art should not mix with politics. So I've been defending that, so yes, not only I not resisted, but I have imposed this a lot against a lot of people who try to put me on the labels, and that's the only label I have resist. So I have fight all the other ones, except this one. And actually, part of the resistance, the fight for having the label of political artist and impose that is people who think that political art, and I had all this discussion with friends, political art is art that talks about political things or use political reference like an image of an ex-president or a photo in a newspaper of an actual event that happens somewhere that creates some commotion. And I don't think the way I see political art is not somebody that reacts, but it's somebody that anticipates the political. Why? Because as an artist, and using his imagination as an artist, can understand what is the systematic institutional construction that is being built towards a subject, or towards an ideology, or towards an oppression, and understanding that logic in order to preemptively create the work before the things happen. So I think that's something also I believe. So, in fact, I always say this phrase, but I will repeat it because I think it summarizes my attitude in terms of political art. I don't think I do political art, but I think that I use art to create political situations. And I think that's what we should do. I mean, that's what I believe in. And I think this is what politicians pay attention to. And I think there is another aspect of political art in which we need to learn without embarrassment and without, the language of power. The language the people with power use in order to be heard in our criticism. Because I am all for doing demonstrations, I have done many, I'm all for doing all of these kind of optics of rebellion, but in my personal experience, they only react when they feel you speak their own language. So they can hear your criticism, and they can understand that you have power as they have in their same arena. So part of what I've done as a political artist is understanding what is the space of operation of power and enter it somehow. And try to, dynamitize is maybe a bad word, but to challenge it from the within or the outside, but always understanding where it is. Another question was, how do you hope for people to engage with your artwork? Well, very quickly, I would say that what I want people is to use art. I don't want them to understand it. I don't want them to enjoy it. I want them to feel it as their own tools, as their own civic tools, to talk and to create a different expectation of their ideas. So I think, very quickly, then they asked me, how far-reaching do you see the impact of activism, art, and activism to be? Well, I don't know. I think in this case, I think I don't know, I feel there is a lot to be done still on that. And my only concern is to understand as artists and activists how to make institutions work. Because for too long, we have left the responsibility of our life, of the decisions that we need to take in our hands to institutions that actually have become empty of their own mandate, of their own functionality. So I think this is one of the aspects in which I think activism can be the most impactful. We all know what is wrong. We need to start looking for alternative solutions. We need to start looking for not only to signal what the problem is, but start creating the solutions that work for each of you. Because, again, too long we have left the solution in the hand of other people. And those people don't have your interests. So why they will do what you want or what is good for you. So I think this is how I think activism and artivism can impact what we're living in. Then they went to the Cuban questions. They asked me, with the recent death of Fidel Castro, do you see an opportunity for free speech in Cuba? I think in terms of Cuba, it's extremely complicated because there is a fantasy about what Cuba is. The left, which I'm part of the left, the international left has for many, many years see Cuba as a beacon, which it was, of, against racism, for the fight, international fight for justice, and all of that was amazing. But we are not anymore in the 60s and the 70s in Cuba. People need to start understanding that because it's hurting us. It's hurting us that you guys, I mean, not specifically, but the people go to Cuba and they only see happy faces. But I wonder if people are happy because they're covering something, they are escaping the reality, or because they want to see you, they want you to see them happy as a way to have an image for the country. So I think it's complicated because in my case, I want in Cuba to create a conversation from the left about the things that could be rethought and could be shifted. That opportunity is not so easy because, again, the government doesn't want to hear criticism, and the people who are my peers internationally sometimes don't want to hear it either. So it is a very difficult situation, and at the same time, I don't know if you're recording this, but at the same time, I'm not going to Miami to meet with Marco Rubio. So, so I'm in this situation where I don't want to meet these people, but then the peers that should be the ones with whom I can talk, and not in public probably, but maybe among us, have criticism and help me, and help others in Cuba to advance some of the issues or some of the. So I think that is very problematic, and I think this is one of the reasons probably why the left it is in a crisis at the moment, and we need to think about what to do from the left. Sorry, I know many people are not all from the left, but I'm not talking here now, so sorry. But I think when I say the left, I don't only say the traditional left, but I say let's rethink spaces of social justice. I think many, many times we have separated each other by you are from this tendency or that. We need to start thinking about social justice. And you know better than me because you live it every day, but yeah. So in terms of opportunity for free speech in Cuba, I don't know. I have to say that in the United States there is a lot of, I've seen a tendency of personalizing too much. And the fact that Fidel died, he died for many of us in 2006, not last year. When he got sick, when we saw him falling, that was an image that all of the Cubans have in their traumatizing image, seeing him falling and then getting sick. So for many of us, it has been a trespass of power that took 10 years. So he has been out of the public influence arena for a long time. For us, free speech depends. I think that the Cuban government is trying to first acquire all the economic power possible. All the kids, the sons and daughters of the president and all the military people are taking over the enterprises, the big international conglomerates, opportunities, the businesses, so they're taking over the economic power and the political power. So I think freedom of speech will come to Cuba, but it will come as a theater to please you, all of you. So you feel more comfortable when you go there. So it's not so guilty to go. Another question, do you feel that circumstances of political activism will change in coming years? Same question. I think that right now there is it's interesting because places like Cuba, like Russia, now like, not so much, it's not that smart, like the president, these are people who understand the value of art. It is incredible, like these people really understand that art plays into people's imagination and how strong people's imagination the control of people's imagination is. Why? Because these people are dictators who wants to control your imagination, they want to put in you, and this is what you have to fight right now very much, put in you the sense that there is no option. You know, I think this is the big challenge right now, not only in the United States, but in the world. How neoliberalism and how capitalism have put in our imagination that there is no other option. And I think this is why all of us here and artists are so important right now, because we are the ones who can break this fatalism. Then they asked me, of course, about Hannah Arendt regarding the global political climate today. I am extremely into telling people to read Hannah Arendt. The other day, I'm becoming a peer for Hannah Arendt. The other day, I had these people saying like they have a reading group, and I was sending them like Hannah Arendt's essays, and there is another thing that another book that was very influential to me, and it's the book Mephisto. Have you read it? But it's by Michael Mann. And this is an extremely interesting book because it's an actor that just wants to be an actor in the upcoming Nazi Germany, and of course it's a process of this person compromising everything he is in order to become famous. And I think you all should read it because it's fantastic. I mean, every time I'm doing something, I remember this character. I never go there. And I think it's easier than you think not to compromise. I think it's also part of the traps that we live in which people think that not compromising is a dangerous thing. That not compromising is so difficult and so hard. It is not. It is not. But you have to believe and to know what you believe in and educate yourself in what you believe in as well. So in this sense, I think that part of the things that I have come up to understand through Hannah Arendt is the idea of seeing and transform the idea of aesthetics into the idea of, in Spanish it works, in English not so good. In Spanish it's estética, and if you divide the word est, in Latin it is, and ética means ethics. So by reading Hannah Arendt, I kind of came up with this idea that maybe the kind of art that we should do for the society we want to live in is an art of ethics, the art of ethics. And I'm not talking about morals, I'm talking about ethics, about challenging the ecological regime of ethics that we live in. And maybe instead of having an aesthetic shock, we can have a pleasant ethical shock. No? And I think that we need to understand also the relation between wishing, thinking, and doing. Many times we don't combine these three. Many times we wish and think, but don't do. Many times we do and don't think. And I think for me it's very important to create this arc, civic arc of wishing, thinking, and doing. And they say, what do I see in the future of my work? Well, I see myself giving to you the baton. Thank you so much.